this is James, and I'm here with the Oracle Outlook for the week starting November the 20th, 2017. This week, I really wanted to work with a playing card deck, and I thought I was going to be using a playing card deck that literally just came in the mail. Long story short, I had backed a project on Kickstarter, and the deck was funded and completed, and I just got it in the mail, so I thought that was going to be the deck I was going to work with this week, but not so fast. Another deck decided it wanted to work with me, so it started calling me, subtly calling out to me. And so the deck that I have now chosen to work with for this week's reading is still a playing card deck. It is the Hermes Playing Card Oracle. It is by Robert M. Place, and it is published by Hermes Publications. So the interesting thing about this deck, while I talked about it being a playing card deck, there are very interesting little symbols on it. So some of the symbols might be familiar to you because 36 of the cards have Lenormand symbols on it, right? So the other 16 or so cards have different symbols from other divination or cartomancy systems like the Gypsy Witch cards and the Old Whitman fortune-telling cards. So they all have not just a playing card, but the symbol in the middle. So what I like about this, it's like working with a Lenormand deck, but instead of the Lenormand symbol taking center stage, the playing card becomes the center focus, and then the Lenormand symbol, or the other divination symbol, becomes a secondary message. So that is how I'm going to approach it this week. So we get the best of both worlds. We get the playing card aspect of it for me, and then for those of you who like Lenormand, you'll also get the secondary Lenormand aspect. So now that I've talked about the deck, let's just jump right in. And I have the deck on hand, so we're going to shuffle the cards. And as I do every week, the intention and question for the reading is, what do we need to know for the week ahead? Now I'm feeling like my other way that I like to shuffle cards. We'll do that a couple of times, and I think we'll be good. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut the cards. And fan them out. And I'm feeling, because I've been working with Lenormand and Kipper the last few weeks, that I'm going to still attempt a line of 5. So I'm looking for 5 cards. And I have them picked out, so we're going to take the rest of the deck up. We're going to put that to the side. All right, so what I always do when I work with a line of 5 is I like to look at the middle card first. For me, the middle card is like the hinge card because it connects the 2 cards on the left and the 2 cards on the right. But I also tend to look at it as the central issue for the week possibly, or what it is that we're being asked to focus on for the week ahead. So taking a look at the card. Okay, so here we have the 9 of Hearts. So the 9 of Hearts is traditionally known in cartomancy as the wish card. So we are being asked to focus on, or a central issue could be, what it is that we need to do to make our dreams come true, because the 9 is a number of gain or attainment, and then the hearts represent something of an emotional nature. So this could be focusing on emotional gains, emotional rewards, things of that nature this week. So it could be tied to a particular hope or wish, you know, and then we see that come to pass. So now the interesting thing about this, because I talked about the idea of a Lenormand symbol, so those of you who work with Lenormand will know that the 9 of Hearts is connected to or associated with the Rider. So here we have the secondary image, and that's Rider. So Rider can represent news or messages. So there may be a focus on communication regarding news and messages, right? There could also be, for me, this card can be about visits or arrivals. And so it could be saying too that there's going to be a focus on visitations or arrivals, things of that nature. And that would make sense because this is the week for some of us who are going to be observing the Thanksgiving holiday to be traveling and visiting family members, or and that could be family by blood, because the suit of hearts can also represent family, home, and family related issues, or those people that we have chosen to create family with. You know, there's family by blood, and then there's a family we choose, right? So, but whatever the case may be, this may be a week where we're going to be focusing on arrivals and visits, right? As well as news and communication. But bringing it back to the Nine of Hearts, this could just be a week where we get to see a lot of emotional gains or attaining something of an emotional nature, and that will make us feel a sense of happiness, satisfaction, and fulfillment. So that is the Nine of Hearts. So now it'll be very interesting to see the cards that are on each side of that, because that'll give us more about the nature of the wish. But it will also, too, keeping with the idea that I read with direction in mind, the writer is facing the cards that are on the right-hand side. So that may tell us more about the nature of the news or the arrival or visit, because that would indicate the destination possibly. So let's take a look. And I'm going to do what I did last week. I'm going to start with the card on the far left and work my way over one at a time. So starting with the card on the far left, we have the Ace of Diamonds. So the Ace of Diamonds, aces represent something new. So this is a beginning stage, something that holds the root or the seed for something down the line. So this is like potential for the future. That's how I tend to read aces. Aces represent a new beginning, something that's starting up, or the potential for the future. Now the suit of diamonds, diamonds can represent money. It's also, for me, a suit that represents things like power and success. So I like the fact that we talked about the idea of the Nine of Hearts representing an emotional gain or something being attained on an emotional level. And then this would be possibly for some people watching this video, it might be of a material nature, right? This could be the start of something new. Now, in cartomancy, the Ace of Diamonds has to do with letters. So it's very interesting that we have Rider in the middle of Nine of Hearts as news and messages. And so that would make sense, because sometimes for me, this card can actually be a letter. So we may be receiving written forms of communication, going with Rider being news and messages, right? And the other thing about this is that the news or the message or the letter or the document may be an invitation. If we go with the idea that Rider represents a visit or arrival, and this card is coming as the first card in the line, then this could actually be an invitation, right? So we receive a written invitation to come somewhere, right? Or to go somewhere, right? So there's that. Now, this has the Lenormand symbol of the sun. So the sun, for me, is a card that represents success, and it represents confidence, and it represents having a positive outlook. So it could be as a result of the nature of the news or the message. You know, there is maybe an element of success, or, you know, the idea of the message is going to help somebody with their sense of confidence, or that the news or message is going to give them more of a positive outlook on life, because I'm looking at sun and I'm feeling like the idea of looking on the brighter side, right? So there's that. So that is Ace of Diamonds. So now the card in between Ace of Diamonds and Nine of Hearts is, oh, here we have another diamond card. So here we have the Seven of Diamonds. So Seven of Diamonds is, now I talked about the idea of the Ace of Diamonds representing the start or the beginning stage of something having to do with a material, right? This card represents a material, resources, things of that nature. So we have another diamond card. But now we have an increase, because we went from the Ace, which is the potential, to a 7. The Seven of Diamonds is a card that can represent an investment. So for me, if we're going with money, this could represent a large sum of money. And so this could come up when somebody may be looking at their stock portfolio, their investments. It could be like they're planning the seed for the future, and it may have to do with stock or investments. This could also be, I'm thinking of myself, so this could also be 401k, you know, something that's going to allow your money to grow and develop, So there's that. Now, if it's not about money in particular, there could be something that started with the Ace of Diamonds, and now we're waiting to see what the results are of that. Because again, this card is about growth and development, but it's also about waiting for results, right? So there's that. And another thing that I'm being inclined to say with the Seven of Diamonds, sometimes it can come up when we're in a stage in life where we're just taking a really good look at things. So this card can be about evaluating things, and we're taking a look to see what is the return on the level of investment that we have put into a particular situation, right? So in other words, you've been putting time, energy, maybe even resources into a situation, and now you're taking a step back to see what you're recouping from that investment of your time, energy, and resources, right? And then you're asking the bigger question, was it worth it? Did you actually get a return on that investment? And, you know, I'm a big believer in that we always get a return. So the bigger question, or maybe the better question is, are you happy? Nine of Hearts. Are you happy with the return on that investment, right? Now, from a more spiritual standpoint, the Seven of Diamonds is a personal growth and development card. So even with that, you know, your takeaway could be like, what kind of growth and development did you receive through whatever the experience is that you're taking an evaluation process on, right? So now we have the inset of birds. So birds is all about communication and conversation. So we kind of have a theme going here, right? We have Rider, which is about news and messages, but now birds would suggest that along with the Ace of Diamonds being about written forms of communication, this would be verbal, right? So we could have a thing here where we're maybe experiencing emails, text messages, voicemails, birds. I tend to think of phone calls, things of that nature, right? And so we may be considering our options, you know, as to where we might go if we're being asked to visit people, you know. So there's that. Now with birds, birds can also represent communication between a partnership or a relationship, because there's two birds on the card. So this could be an issue that has to deal with a particular relationship or a particular partnership, especially if the feelings, going back to heart, especially if the feelings prior to whatever the good news could be, whatever the hope or wish being fulfilled or granted is, especially if there's been some sort of frustration with that, because birds, from an emotional standpoint, for me, can represent something that's frustrating, right? So there's that with the Seven of Diamonds. So now, the thing I want to point out now is we have three cards that are red. So red cards usually represent something very positive. So we're starting off the week, or starting off the reading on a very positive note, right? Now, from an emotional standpoint, these three cards, diamonds for me represents being patient and persistent. So somebody may need to be patient and persistent regarding a situation, especially if it's just starting out. It's not going to grow overnight, right? So you may need to have some sort of patience for that. And then the hearts would represent being happy and being optimistic, right? So there's that. So now let's take a look at the card coming after the Nine of Hearts. Okay, so now I spoke too soon, because now we have our first black card. So now we have the Six of Clubs. So clubs is a suit that can represent work and business, but it can also represent social activity. So again, going with this idea or this theme, I'm really focusing on the idea of Thanksgiving taking place, or a holiday taking place this week. So there may be a bit more social activity. Then the six with that would be about balance. You know, how can you, if maybe a person needs to balance work and social activity with a holiday taking place this week. And I find it very interesting because the inset here, or the Lenormand symbol, is cross. So cross can represent things having to do with religion and spirituality, and it's very interesting that I mentioned the idea about spiritual growth and development. So that may be a thing this week to consider. Now, if we look at the pairing of Rider and Cross, here we have news and messages that may be of a spiritual or religious nature, right? Going with the idea of cross represents religion and spirituality, right? It could also be a situation where, if we're talking about the need for being patient and persistent, then the possibility here is that the message could be, for that person, is about keeping the faith, right? Because that's how I always look at cross in terms of advice. The other thing here is a possibility, because now we have a black card showing up after three red cards, then cross can take on the idea of something that is a little bit of a difficult nature. So this card can represent difficulty and burdens, right? So it could just represent, if we're going with the idea that maybe Rider represents a visit, then the cross could suggest like a visit becomes difficult, you know, that kind of thing. So it could just be saying too, like if people are visiting, then maybe it's about sharing the responsibility for the holiday. If you're all visiting for the holiday or joining other people, it's about somebody not feeling like they need to take on the burden of that all by themselves. Share the load, right? So that is the 6 of clubs for me. So now let's take a look at the last card rounding out the line. So here we have, okay, so here we have another black card. And so here we have the 10 of spades. So for me, when I read traditional playing cards, when there is a spade as the last card, it could represent a little bit of a block. So that's very interesting that we had talked about with cross coming before it, that we had this idea of maybe a burden or a difficult situation, because in that context, cross can represent a crisis or an ordeal. So there may be a little bit of a bump in the road this week. And I'm saying that because we have the inset here of ship. And so ship represents progression, advancement, and moving forward. But it's also the travel card. So for some people this week, it may be, they may have the potential for some travel problems showing up. And so that would make sense if we pair cross and ship, right? So some people are being given a heads up that there may be a possibility having to do with travel or travel plans. And that would make sense too if we take into account that ship can also represent people coming long distances. I tend to look at this card as something foreign, something abroad, you know, something international. So it could be people who are coming from out of the country, you know, and so there may be some sort of trouble or problem or difficulty with that. But the 10 as a number can just represent a transition. So it's very interesting. We started the line with an ace and we ended with a 10. So they both actually share the same number. If we take the 10 and we reduce it to 1, we add the 1 and the 0, it's 1. So the 10 is a number of a transition because it takes us from a place where we're completing something and then we're moving to the next stage, we're starting something new. So this could just be a cycle coming to an end, and it's something that we may need to give some thought or decision making to, because I tend to look at spades as mental activity, and so this could represent problem solving and decision making. But I'm looking at it at the heart of it, it may have to do with travel. And very interestingly, because that's the center card, Rider was all about news and messages, but it's also about visits and arrivals. So there may be some sort of problem that needs to be resolved regarding one's travel plans. So on that note, I will end and round out this week's Oracle Outlook. So as I close, I'm James Himm Mitchell, and I'd first like to thank you for sharing space here with me for this week's reading. And as I'm sharing thanks, I also like to thank those of you who have taken the step to subscribe to the channel. I've had a number of new subscribers this week, so I was delighted to see that. So I want to first officially welcome you to the channel and say thank you for taking that step to subscribe. So I want to thank you for that as well. And as I close, I want to say, have a wonderful day, have a wonderful week, and for those of you who are celebrating the Thanksgiving holiday, I hope you have a happy holiday. Take care.